So, Emma, what is your life's purpose?
Mhm. My life's purpose is to empower men to be the best lover, partner, and leaders that they can be, using their sexuality as a pathway to self-realization.
I talked to you before, and this is the first time that we talk about this topic here on this podcast. And before I start on this channel, I wanted to ask the question, why should people even have sex right now in these modern times?
Why not?
Yeah, you got me there. I thought about a lot of possible answers, but I didn't think about that one. Yeah, no, I think the reasoning behind the question is because of all of the relationships at the moment. They are just so fragile, at least from the German perspective, and sex is something that we don't really like to talk about, especially here. It's like a little taboo. And yeah,
Mm,
so of course, the first question that comes to mind when you first learn about it is why you actually need it. Because up until you
mhm.
learn about it, you never thought about it, that is
Oh,
behind
okay. So
it.
now I understand where you're coming from with that, because the first thing you said was relationships are a little, like it's difficult right now in a relationship. But sex and relationships have nothing to do with one another. And I think that's maybe where we need to start talking about this. And since we're born, if you think about little babies, um, they touch their genitals for pleasure. Like it's kind of a strange, but you look at the little, 2 months old, 3 months old, and they're just touching their penises, the little girl touching their vagina, and it's because it feels good, right?
Really?
And of course, look at all
No,
the
that's
babies.
that's actually the first time that I hear about it. I'm not
Every
even kidding.
baby's
That
every baby does that. Every baby's sexual, but because we have this view of sexuality, that is not what. So, and that's already. I love that you explain a little bit more. But sexuality is conditioned here in adulthood. But sexuality is actually a very innocent relationship with our own body. So part of the work that I do is actually bringing men back to the innocence of their sexuality. But so we're going back to infants, babies, young kids. They touch themselves, not even thinking there's something wrong with doing it because they haven't yet conditioned by parents or anything else about it, right? And so they haven't been told what you can and cannot do and where you do those things and how you should not do them. But when they're a little baby, they just like they put their foot in their mouth, they have their penis, their thing, they're just discovering and they're comfortable in their own body and their humanity. So sexuality, I think, is first and foremost for you. And that's what I teach men and women. I work with women too, but your sex is for you. It's for no one else. You may decide to share it with a partner, but it's first and foremost a relationship with your own body, your own pleasure. Um, and that's where it begins. And there is no conditioning about this. It's just like you have a relationship with your other parts of your body, you should develop a healthy relationship with your genitals.
okay. So when you talk about this healthy relationship, what does that look like in adulthood? Because through school or everything we see on internet, we get new opinion about the whole topic, and it is certainly not innocent. And so, how do you get back to it? How should this innocency feel?
So it's so if we're going back to pleasure, just receiving pleasure and giving yourself pleasure, that's all it is. And it's a way to really feel good in your body. That's it. Um, it really is the foundation of this. And people have forgotten to just touch themselves for the pleasure of it. They touch themselves with a goal. So the goal of orgasm or the goal of getting something from it. Or, men have a lot of pressure because when they use their sex, it's in order to give a woman an orgasm, let's say, for instance, or it's in order to get this, in order to get that. And they have sex trying to think about the best way to do it to get what they want. But
Mm-hmm.
true sexuality is not about what you get out of it. It's how does it feel? And so when you go back to just experiencing your own touch, and actually all of your five senses, when you connect with your body using your sense of touch, your sense of hearing, of smelling, of tasting, of seeing, of looking, and truly taking on the pleasure of being a man or a woman in and of itself without any goal, you can actually relax into your sexual pleasure. And there's really no other reason. So there's two reasons traditionally for sex. One is procreation, but outside, and procreation is really literally a 2-minute endeavor, right? At the right time.
Yeah.
But it's 2 minutes. Anything that's not procreation becomes the other avenue, which is pleasure. And it's an art, it's a journey, it's an experience. About healthy versus unhealthy, I think when things become unhealthy is when you weaponize sex. When you use sex for something, to gain something, to get something, then it's not just sex for pleasure and it's just something else. Women deny sex to men in relationships sometimes just because they're mad at something and they'll just deny sex because they know it hurts a man. So you're weaponizing. Removing sex is weaponizing. Giving sex in order to get something is weaponizing. You understand? So that's not a healthy relationship to your sexuality. It's using it as power, battle, struggle. But a healthy relationship to our sexuality is simply using our sex for pleasure unconditionally. And it's first and foremost something that we develop with ourselves. We have to develop this with ourselves. And when we are integrated our sexuality, and there's no more agenda, then it's something that we may choose to share with somebody. And something that was interesting, and I'll just finish with that, is that sex doesn't have to be shared. Some people decide to just be single by choice, just deep
Mm-hmm.
and create a beautiful life that they love. And sex can be part of your life when you're single. It's one aspect of yourself and getting to know yourself. Other people decide to be in relationships. Okay. So some people decide to marry and to be monogamous. Other people decide to date. So there is the construct in which sex is lived is a different conversation than just what is sex and why should we have sex. You understand? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There is one little thing I didn't get my head around. You just said that if a woman doesn't grant a man sex, it's weaponizing it. But that, first of all, sounds pretty wrong because it's the choice of the woman, of course. If there is,
But
and if
sometimes
she
they use
doesn't
it
want
as,
to, it's
yes, but very often you'll see that women know that one way to hurt a man or to gain power is to
okay.
say no to sex.
So
So you have
only
a lot of
in that
women,
case.
when we have an argument, you have an argument in a relationship and you're mad at your partner, well, you'll just say no sex for a week. Kind of like that. That's you weaponizing sex
Okay.
this
Yeah.
way. That's
No.
what I
No.
meant, right?
Okay.
So
So also
yeah.
you talked a little bit about sex with yourself, so self-pleasure, and also in one of your recent videos you talked about self-pleasure not being something shameful or being something good. And first, when I heard that, I tend to disagree a little bit because
Yeah, tell me more.
of the way I think about it when I hear it. The first things that come to mind are, of course, the all of the not innocent things that come with it: the porn, the addictions, the pills that getting described for it, the erection dysfunctions. Yeah, only man problems on that hand, but all of this. So also the shame that you feel after self pleasure for many people. How shouldn't it be shameful? Why do you believe the opposite?
Yeah. So tell me more first about, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when you saw that particular video that you're talking about, I know which one you're talking about, and your first thought was, well, no, that's shameful. Tell me more about how you see the context of self-pleasure. What made you feel this way? What were some of the thoughts that came to your mind?
Yeah, saying in the conversation, I think it never represents sex like sex does, like sex with another person. It's pretty much something else, and it's not something to be proud of, I believe. That is the main thing.
So you're
If
talking
that
about porn, right? Is that what
about
you said?
everything around it, yeah.
Yeah. But why is self-pleasure and porn in the same conversation?
What are it doesn't even need to be porn, but just all of those not safe for work contents and everything.
Yeah,
There's
so it's really interesting. Self-pleasure has nothing to do with looking at content. Self-pleasure is pleasuring yourself, period. You don't need to look at anything. So I
mhm.
teach men, for instance, to literally be in bed, close their eyes, and start breathing. And as you breathe, connect with your genitals. And then start touching your whole body with your hands, and you focus on the sensations. And you're focusing on the sensations. You're going to feel maybe a tingling in your testicle, warmth in your belly. You may feel an expansion in your chest. You may feel a contraction in the tip of your penis. You may feel some tingling. This is what self-pleasure is. It's being completely 1000% focused on what you feel. And then you can start actually touching yourself in different way, but really, and breathing and moving your turn on into your body. You can actually have prostate orgasm, non-ejaculatory orgasm, penile orgasm, chest, nipple orgasm, brain orgasm. You can have full body orgasm with every part of you tingling. Like there is a million things your body can feel. You can self-pleasure in order to feel your self-love. You can self-pleasure
Whoa,
in
sorry,
order to,
sorry, sorry, sorry.
yes.
Uh, On that note, you just I think I heard that in one of the other podcast episodes, and one of my guests who talked about this, that you don't only have orgasms with your genitals, but does it feel the same? How? That's pretty much
Yeah.
the first thing that
No,
comes
it's
to
the same.
mind. Why?
So every single orgasm you have should feel different, right? If it's always the same thing, you're basically having just one neural pathway. You're doing the same thing over and over again, which is partly why people get super bored of sex and start looking for
Mhm.
crazy diversity outside because they have not understood what the body does. How does it feel? It feels bigger than a genital orgasm when you start having orgasm in other parts of your body. But it's that same, it's a similar, never the same, it's a similar tingling, hit, buzzing, intense pleasure, like so much pleasure you couldn't barely touch that skin anymore. It's like an explosion of pleasure. So you have to do one of the sound self-discovery meditation,
So
and you'll discover
everything you
that.
just say is completely new to me.
Yes. But
I
so
never heard
self-pleasure
of
is
that.
this, right? So there's not even porn in the picture. It's about connecting with yourself and having an intention. So for instance, I have a self-pleasure practice that I teach, which is to help men move through heartbreaks. So when you have lost your love and you're like really like you can't even breathe, we've all been through heartbreaks and how painful this is. You can actually use your self-pleasure practice to move through the grief. And you can marry pleasure and self-love and feel compassion for yourself and move this energy. And your orgasm is actually the way that you can let go of that past love. And you'll feel in your body, and several men actually have commented on the website about this particular one. It's like here, you're using your sex as healing. You're using your self-pleasure as healing to get over a heartbreak. But you can use your sex for any intention that you want. So, and the foundation I want to say here is that our sexuality is life force. So it gives life, with reproduction, but it gives life to anything else. It's energy. So when you feel pleasure, it's an energy charge, right? And because it's located in the pelvis area, when we look at energy centers in Tantra, which is, a construct in which Tantric sex is where I teach, that's where you have the center for your creativity. So the same creativity you do to create your podcast, to create art, to create a new business, just anything that activates your creative juices, your sex, it's the same exact energy. So you can actually, by amplifying your sexual pleasure, you can amplify the charge in your body, and you can direct it to support something. So you can self-pleasure to manifest wealth. Let's say you want to make $1 million a year. You can actually activate your self-pleasure using the tools of Tantra, and every single orgasm becomes this manifestation in your nervous system of getting closer to being a millionaire. So it's not just about getting off. Oh, I'm horny. Let me look at porn and get off in 5 minutes. Take 15 maybe at the most, right? No, self-pleasure is an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, no time. You could spend the entire Sunday afternoon, get lost in your own body and having a mind shift, because when you have incredible pleasure, it takes you somewhere else, right? You feel so good. You feel so powerful. You feel so peaceful. There's no tension in tantric sex. There is just a feeling of relaxation and expansion. So this kind of sex has nothing to do with porn. And it's interesting when you talk about porn. If you want me to say something about porn.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. So I work with men who are losing their ability, as you were saying. You were saying sometimes we have erectile dysfunction, or we have premature ejaculation from porn. The problem with porn is not the problem, it's how you use it. So porn disconnects you from your genitals because your attention is not in your genitals anymore. It's at the content.
Mhm.
The sex I teach is 100% of your attention is on your genitals. You become very sensitive. Porn desensitizes penises. Because you're not very attentive to your pleasure, you have to stroke harder and faster in order to feel. If this would not give you an orgasm, if you looked at porn. But if you were no porn and you're really in the sensation, and this becomes electric, right? Most men who do porn have lost the ability to feel pleasure at slow touch. They need fast friction because they became desensitized. And so when you're desensitized, you cannot control your erection. First, you cannot delay ejaculation long enough because you're not sensitive enough. You can't feel the point of no return early enough. You're basically on it and it's too late. And also because you're used to friction, and friction activates the reflex of ejaculation. So the way you make love taught by porn with your own, not the content you see, the way you touch yourself is routed for sexual failure with a partner. To be successful with a partner and be a marathon lover, you need to be ultra sensitive. It's like your penis needs to be a Ferrari, not a Fiat Punto. Okay. Like,
Okay.
meaning you're able to just put a little bit on the accelerator and you're already like, at the first corner, right? But the Fiat Punto, you're going to have to really push it hard, in order to get to the first corner, and it's not going to go very fast. So you want to train yourself to be that Ferrari, super sensitive, that even somebody blowing on your penis and you would feel just so much pleasure. That's what you want to become. And this is training. It's you with you. That makes sense?
Definitely makes sense. And you had a few points. Of course, we both had different startings or understandings of the word self-pleasure. But
Yes.
going on, you talked about this tantric stuff, and people that are listening to you may want to have a first step into this world. They never heard of it like I did, and they just think to themselves they want to test it out. Where would you start? How can you do the little beginners exercise?
For tantric sexuality, is that the
Yeah.
question? So um, there are different tools. So first, I would say Google it. Google
Okay.
what tantric sex is. So, and first, tantra and tantric sex. Tantric sex is a way to have sex using the tantric principles. Tantra overall is a framework that comes from India, but it's a framework that has nothing to do with sex. It's a framework that um, proposes a way of living your life in a very fulfilling way. So it includes not only philosophies and ways of living, ways of eating, ways of thinking, ways of exercising your body, all of this in order to live a life that will guide you to know yourself deeply and self-realize who you're meant to be in this lifetime. So those tools, breath work, yoga, etc., those tools transfer them to sex. Now sex become a pathway for you to get to know yourself inside out. And through the practice of sex, using the tools we'll talk about, you're able to self-realize. So it's
Hmm.
first and foremost something you do for getting to know yourself. So it always starts, a few things, I'll give you a few, but tantric sex is always done in a state of relaxation. It's not in a state of high libido, super turned on, etc. When you go into super turned on, super excited, I have to stroke myself, you're in a state of stress and you use your sex to release stress. This is not what tantric sex is about. What we want is give ourselves pleasure and get to know each other and use our sex in the service of an intention. So you need to first take care of your stress before you get undressed and touch yourself. Your stress is not here to release tension. You start in a tension-free environment, and the pace of your sexuality will change. Now I have all the time in the world. So if you need to take a shower, if you need to go for a jog, if you need whatever it is, you need to be relaxed. But so when you're relaxed, you'll have more pleasure than if you are under tension. So now I'm opening the pathways to really feel. And so we usually mix slower touch with breath work. Your breath amplifies sensation. Your breath can also move pleasure in different parts of your body. And there's just different ways to touch yourself that are not mechanical. And the presence, you mentioned presence. So it's a sex that is very present. And my pleasure and my sex is meditation. It's kind of how you want to look at it. So when I touch myself, I practice being present to my touch. And every time my mind goes to fantasy or goes to the stock market or something, like you've basically broken your meditative state, you go back to it. And when you can
Hmm.
practice this on your own, and it's really hard to do, but I much prefer practicing meditation with self-pleasure than just looking at a candle. It's a lot more fun. But when you're able to cultivate this presence, you'll have greater pleasure. You'll start to be able to explore what kind of orgasm you want to have. You could set, my intention today is to have a non-ejaculatory orgasm, or 10. I want 10 non-ejaculatory orgasm in an hour. Or I want to have a full body orgasm, or I want to be able to feel whatever, inspired for whatever. Once you're able to do that, it will change the way you make love with a partner, because you'll be more sensitive, you'll be calmer, you'll be more connected with yourself, and therefore more connected with your partner. So it's just a totally different way to look at sex. And it's not friction-based either. So you could have, and it's the fascinating thing, Their two orgasm can be physical, but they can also be energetic. So it's easier for women to have energetic orgasms than men because women are more attuned to energy and emotions and these kinds of energy than men are. Men are just as capable and as good, but it's less intuitive for them to get there. But a woman could have a cervical orgasm, even a squirting orgasm without touching herself at all, just through breath work. You can have a nipple orgasm just through breath work, right? This was some of the homeworks I had to do when I was in tantric school. Funny story about this. Practically, the first time it happened to me, I was in the subway in New York City over the Brooklyn Bridge, and I was doing my breath work, and I had a squirting orgasm in my yoga pants sitting on the bench there, and I was like, "What am I going to
On the
do?"
subway.
In the subway. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't have a towel. It's going to look like I peed myself. And I was like, wow, it really works. And so men can do the same thing. I have men who were able to have rock hard erection just from breath work, not touching themselves in the office. So I just want to say that because we always think I have to stroke hard or a certain way in order to orgasm or in order to have even a strong erection. You don't. Sex is not friction based in Tantra.
Okay.
Friction is one of the touch type that you can use, but it's by no means the only one. And even being totally steady and still inside a partner, you can have incredible sensation even without moving. So you learn basically what I love about this, and I would love to teach men, because men always think, oh, women can have so many types of orgasm, and us, it's pretty much always the same thing. And I'm like, no, you've been lied to. There's so many ways you can experience your pleasure. So then your self-pleasure practice becomes exploration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely, but still overwhelmed by pretty much the amount of new stuff
Information.
you're
Yeah.
telling me. I would say that is the main thing that goes through my mind right now. So thank you first of all for all of the insights and the story. Still, you said at the beginning of the podcast that relationships and sex don't have something to do with each other. But going onto the topic that the situation of relationships can be very, very fragile at the moment. Like, for instance, you have one night stands, you have only dating, like all of the ways you already talked about. And still, sometimes they end in heartbreak or cheating one another. Sex is still a role in many, many breakups, right? Or wouldn't you say that?
Sex is what in many breakups? Can you repeat the
It,
question?
it has also a not small part on the reason of the breakup.
I don't know that it's the truth. So I coach couples too, and there's a million reasons why people separate. So it's,
Okay,
again,
then let
yeah,
me
so I'm not sure.
put it differently. Why should people cheat? Why is there a whole cheating
Mhm.
thing going on right now? A little hype as well. If you look into the social media, some people are actually proud of it and everything. So how did it become that thing? What can you do
Mm,
against it? Is pretty much the question.
mm. So I'm going to give you another thing that's going to blow your mind. Monogamy is very recent. It is not the biological uh, relationship structure that we were uh, s-
To
from
be,
an
yeah.
anthropology standpoint, very recent. So there's an incredible book, a New York Times bestseller I recommend everyone to read. It's called Sex at Dawn, DAWN, Sex at Dawn. And it just covers how humans from 200,000 years ago until now, and how our sexuality and our relationship have evolved. And it's only since 10,000 years ago that we started to have, marriages and monogamy, or rather a sense of ownership of someone. Before that, we were tribal, 100 people tops per tribe, and every man would sleep with every woman that if you find attractive, you could sleep. And we didn't know who were the father and mother. I mean, we knew the mother, but we didn't know who the father was for any of the kids, right? And this was this today in today's world we would say promiscuity, but this was a way to ensure the survival of the tribe because everyone would take care of everybody, right? And there would not be this jealousy and these things. Like it was just so traditionally we evolved, we grew from being with multiple partners and multiple lovers. And there are even some tribes still today existing in the world whereby if a woman is pregnant, she needs to be continuously fed. She needs to continuously have sperm in her vagina. Otherwise, the baby would stop growing. There was this belief. So then you would have 10, 15 partners a day to just make sure you were always full of sperm inside you for the entire 9 months of pregnancy. So I just want to explain here that
Hmm.
it's very recent that we are monogamous. And it's not even in every part of the world that you have one, two people. Monogamy is not something. So why do we cheat? Because we're not wired biologically to be with one person, right? So some people manage to do this, but most don't, right? So that's why you're starting to have this whole trend, at least in the United States, of ethical non-monogamous relationships, polyamory, right? There's a lot of different, and I coach people who are exploring those things, who have multiple long-term relationships that are parallel to one another's. Um, I also work teaching workshops in sex clubs, which are sex communities for people who are exploring those relationships. They're exploring uh, multiple partners, or having one of my student, yoga student, he lives with 2 women. So he's married with one, and the other one is just a woman who lives in with them all the time. So there's and it's very there is no pain, there's no heartbreak. It's a beautiful relationship, right? And so I think where things go wrong is when people don't know themselves and are full of shame about who they are and their sexuality and their desires to have multiple partners, and they force themselves to stay in a relationship that doesn't match who they are or want to be. And so the problem is the lack of honesty. Radical honesty is the language of love, in my opinion. Right?
Hmm.
So someone has to say, hey, I cannot be just with one woman, but I want to be committed emotionally to you, let's say. But I would like to be able to see other partners, and you're welcome to do the same, and maybe together or maybe separately, or maybe whatever the configuration is. But what we're seeing here happen, in the most progressive areas of the US, because we also have a absolutely non-progressive part in the United States. But in the most progressive part, you're starting to have those conversations and those workshops and those discoveries and places where people can talk about those things and be coached about it. Do you
Is that
understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I need to say that I strongly disagree with some of the points, but is that only a thing for men that you're talking about, or is it
No,
also
women.
for women that
Absolutely.
they?
For women.
Okay.
Absolutely. I am not monogamous. I don't want to. I was in a monogamous marriage,
Hmm.
and it wasn't who I was. And so I had a conversation with my husband, who was my soulmate, someone I love. And I said, this is what I would like. And he said, this is not who I am. And I said, I respect what you want. He said, I totally respect who you are. And we ended up the marriage. but we remain best friends and we are co-workers and we have just so many things, right? So we have the love was saved by the honesty. The marriage container wasn't what was working. And I'm in a different relationship where I'm fully myself and so is my partner. So it's really about being honest with who you are and honest with the person around you. You know, where the
Definitely.
problem arrives is everybody's lying.
Yeah.
And they're lying why? Because they're ashamed. So I stayed in my marriage a long time because I was ashamed of who I was. I was raised Catholic, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah, that
self-pleasure,
I
you
can
don't,
I can see how
it's
that works.
one marriage, it's like, that's it. And I'm like, it doesn't feel right to me. It's never felt right since I was a little girl. Like I am not like this, but I went into the mold and I wasn't happy. And I stayed in a marriage much longer than I wanted to. But thank God I managed to really, truly express myself. And it was very hard because I knew it would end the marriage. And I loved this man so much. But I loved myself more. And so I think people need to be very honest about what they want. And also understanding that things can evolve over time also. It's interesting. There's a lot of conversation as to every decade, generally, we grow. If you're someone who grows, right, every decade you may be a different person and desire a different format of a relationship. Or there'll be some
So
big
that can change as well.
changes and conversation in relationships that may make or break the relationship. So being able to be honest and navigate together what works, it's really important. But I think we are done now sacrificing ourselves
I
for
completely
like our
agree.
grandparents used to, right? Sacrificing yourself and staying on the ground, with your other extracurricular lovers, but you would stay together because it was the right thing to do it. I think there is no more betrayal now than there was before. But before you couldn't leave the marriage. Now people are actually having conversation and are able to leave the marriage, whether they broke up, whether they were honest or dishonest. But now it's not more. I think if my grandparents, not mine, I'm thinking about the other grandparents, different grandparents, but one of the grandparents, I don't think they would be together had they been in today's generation, right? Because they would have had this conversation and they would have left the marriage.
I completely agree with the honesty part and everything, and everybody can love who and whatever they want. Let me rephrase that. You know how I mean that, and everybody should be able to completely express themselves and everything around that, as long as it's legal, of course. But from my standpoint on, I need to say that I have the complete opposite view. I think the whole monogamy part is something that we grew into in the last 10,000 years. Not everybody, it's not for everybody or anything, but for me, it's the only way to go about it because of the whole jealousy thing and everything that goes with it. Of course, you can go into an open relationship, but sooner or later you maybe find a partner or this whole network gets a little too big or something like that. That just concerns me from somebody who never really thought about this a lot. But the way I thought about it while you talked about it, it's just, yeah, that maybe for many, many people, monogamy is the best way because in some parts it sounded like you didn't think that could be the case.
Yeah, it's really about knowing what you want, being clear about it, and finding the right partner for you. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's go on to the last topic of this podcast. We are already doing it very, very long. You teach SSDM. What is that?
So SSDM stands for Sound Self-Discovery Meditations. And so those are self-pleasure audio tracks for men to learn about their own sexuality and discover their own body, as we were
Mhm.
discussing earlier. So I partnered with a production studio. I write the meditations and then I record them and I put the music over it. And it really feels like you're entering an experience. So for different things. Some are learning how to um, learning how thrusting drills or learning how to edge, um, so that you could maybe have more stamina if stamina is something difficult for you. Others could be for some men who have lost libido and they don't really feel connected, or they feel rather disconnected with their sexuality. That's one place to help them reconnect with their sexuality and connect your penis with your heart and with your soul. So it's basically a track, and there's so many different types, but it will teach you how to release shame, guilt around your sexuality and become a more confident man who has more stamina and stronger erection. So it's just, rather than doing it using porn and with all the consequences that that has, why don't we teach men to rewire their sexuality and come back to the innocence of it and just the bare pleasure of it, shame-free, guilt-free. And that's what those are. And
Okay.
they're in English. I'm translating them in French, which is my mother tongue. And I'm going to go Spanish, and I'll go German, and we're going to go all of the languages. Um, but yes, that's what they are. I'll
Before
send
you
you
tell
one.
everybody where to go and where they can get that or learn more about it, I have one last question. Did you ever hear about Kegels?
Kegels,
K-E-E.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I didn't know, I don't know much about it, but I think it's like doing like muscle stuff to gain more stamina and all of that stuff to
Yes.
get a harder erection and everything. Does that really work, or is it just another Instagram hype?
So you need to strengthen your pelvic floor in order to have stronger erections and more control over your pelvic floor overall and your ejaculation. But the Kegel muscles are not the right one to do. The reverse Kegel are the one you want to do. Kegel, it's about really squeezing and tightening, which will send you faster to ejaculation. What men needs to learn is not more tension, they need to learn relaxation. So the reverse Kegel is the opposite. It's learning how to relax and how to create space in the pelvic floor. And it's a practice to learn how to do that, because when you're close to the point of no return, everything's kind of getting really tight. And it's at that and tightening more to prevent ejaculation will not work. What will work more, or rather you have to stop, take a break and then go back. What if you wanted to continue making love, but creating more space so that the pleasure can move out of the penis back down to your pelvic floor and other parts of your belly, or moving it around your belly. So you're taking all the tension out of the penis and moving it elsewhere. But you can't move sexual energy if everything's in lockdown. So I
Hmm.
teach that also in the SSDM. We practice Kegel and reverse
Okay.
Kegel. Yes, so you can have techniques. So you can have techniques for strengthening the pelvic floor, relaxing the pelvic floor. And that's the Ferrari versus the Fiat example. You become a Ferrari when you know how to, all the speeds that you have, and you can manage the tone and the relaxation of your pelvic floor. But yes.
Thank you so much for making that clear. On that note, where can people go if they want to learn more about your stuff and the things you teach?
Sure. So I'm very active in my Instagram, as you say, Moritz. So the Instagram is at Tantric Awakenings together. And then if you want to download a free SSDM to try it out, you can go to my website, and it's tantric-awakenings.com. And then you'll go to SSDM, and there you'll see there's one called I Am the One I Crave. And you can download that. There'll be a few questions to ask you about you. But then you can download it, and you'll have 60 minutes of learning what is it and new skills for you. So I'm looking forward to hearing actually what you think.
Thank you so much, Emma. We never had a conversation like that, so thank you very much for coming today and
You're
taking your
so
time.
welcome. My pleasure.